Hello listeners, we are your co-hosts Jeanine Bailey and Marie Quigley for the Empower World Coaching and Leadership Podcast.
Empower World brings guests who are making a difference to the world to inspire coaches and leaders who lead with mind, heart and soul.
Hello and welcome. My name is Jeanine Bailey. Welcome to the Empower World Coaching and Leadership Podcast. I am calling in from the Wadawurrung country, which is part of the Kulin Nation, south of Melbourne in Australia. So I'm delighted to be here without Marie today, but I am so delighted to have the wonderful Tim Collings, who is joining me today. Before I hand over to Tim, I'm just so grateful that our paths crossed, Tim, because it was through really both of our very strong interest, perhaps passion about climate change and wanting to make a difference to look after our country and the earth, Mother Earth, that we crossed paths through the Coaching Climate Alliance, probably more than a year ago now. And I remember a number of years ago with the bushfires coming through Australia, I really wanted to do something that supported the climate change, and I didn't know what that was. And I wondered how I would do that with such a busy coaching practice. How am I going to make a difference when I came across this Climate Coaching Alliance? And it was sometime later that I met you, Tim, and there was something about your energy and the words that you spoke that drew us together. And so ever since then, we've been looking at collaborating together what we have to, again, support this beautiful country of ours that we live on. And I know you're quite a few miles away from me, but over to you, Tim. I'd love you to introduce yourself to our listeners today.
Well, thank you, Jeanine, for that introduction and those very kind words. I am joining you all, listeners and Jeanine, today from the woody country, which borders the Dharawal and Yuin nations on the south coast or southeast coast of Australia and southern coast of New South Wales. To give as concise an introduction to myself as I can, I am a coach. I am a leader, capability developer, and a learning experience designer. The Climate Coaching Alliance has been one of several, really supportive communities that's enabled my transition into doing what I consider to be part of my deepest work and most meaningful work. And I'm now doing all I can to do more of that work and to weave that work into our collaborative collective, which is the coaching and leadership development organization that I co-founded and am co-CEO of, which is called 4i Leadership.
Yes, thank you, Tim. Thank you for that introduction. I think I got my words around the wrong way with the Climate Coaching Alliance. Thank you. I got the thumbs up from Tim. And I absolutely love the work that you do, Tim. I've only known you for a short time, but through our many gatherings through the Climate Coaching Alliance, as well as the things that we are working on with a number of other coaches as well, to be able to, again, support organizations, teams, to, again, create the transition to a better world. And the feedback is always glowing about the work that you do. So thank you for allowing me to work with you, but also to be on this podcast. And Tim, I know that you the way that you came into this work, there's some rich stories that you've shared in the past. And I know we're on a short podcast today, so I'd really love you to be able to share with our listeners how you came together with, how you brought these three elements together: leadership, coaching, and climate, which seems to be something that more and more coaches are becoming aware of, but don't know how to do this work. So I'm wondering how you brought this all together.
No, thank you for the question. Thank you for the invitation to reference my own experience and to provide whatever reference or frame and maybe shine a little light for anyone listening to this that has a similar inclination. Where to begin? So again, trying to keep things super concise for today. I work with leaders because leaders seem to be the fundamental point of change in most contexts. I think there's a lot to be said for self-agency and ultra, sort of local endeavors. But in my lived experience, and being at work, since I was 16 years old, in any organizational context of any scale, a lot of things change dependent on the capability and capacity of the leader. So that's why I work with leaders. And I hold that true of myself. If I'm having a great day, that energy can be there. If I'm having not such a good day, then the energy is different, and it definitely makes a difference on client outcomes and on team outcomes. But I think we can look at the world now, and we're still counting the months since the latest global climate gathering, COP26, and we can see how there is seemingly this dissonance between actions, words, capabilities of leaders and the outcomes that came from that gathering, just as one example, compared to, I'm going to say, the evidence that we have of what is actually popular desire and sort of population level ambition for quite dramatic change and shift, which I'm not saying is universal, but I certainly believe there would be more radical change endorsed by the general population than was endorsed at that meeting convened by leaders for leaders to make leadership decisions. Coaching, I'm going to talk today primarily about my experience being coached with a little bit of my experience as a coach. Because I think that actually speaks to the role of coaches in climate work. That, what is it that coaches do? They enable individual and small group level transformation to occur, right? Like in a nutshell, right? Like, there's lots of ways and means and methodologies, but that tends to be sort of why you're in the room. And fundamentally, that's what climate work is all about. It's 3 layers of work. It's engaging with this as a massive problem as an individual. It's then looking at how, in whatever group context you choose to then sort of expand that next layer, whether that's family, whether it's local community, whether it's regional collective community or organizational context, but how you're going to do work within that group setting. And then it's thinking about how that then compounds up into a systems level, and whether that system is region, for us states in Australia, or it's national, or it's global, or it's big global corporate, or what have you. And again, that's where the role of coaches comes, right? Like to shine those connecting, or to shine a light on those connecting spaces and connective tissues, and start to invite questions about where the compound impacts of an individual can be, sort of catalysts for connective systemic change. So I came into coaching on behalf of, at request of clients. I very quickly realized that I needed a coach too. So I've kind of had a coach as long as I have been a coach. And now I have a coaching supervisor too. And I came to climate, really off a somewhat revelatory period of a combination of traumatic experiences, personal lived experience of the very worst of what awaits in regards to climate. And I'm not going to expand on that at all here, but if you wish, we can put some links in the show notes to some of the places where that story has been shared. But I think, again, here's a role for coaches, right? Like many people have instances of things in their lives which become moments of calling, yet are unheard or unrecognized or disassociated from, or just not sort of really understood in the moment at the time. And working with a coach, you can start to stitch these things together or bring them into a more significant place. And the story that I tell is one of rediscovery and reconnection. And I can absolutely point to work with coaches over years that gave me the tools and capability to do that self-renarration. I'm a great believer in narrative coaching as a methodology. I think that's a particularly powerful tool for coaches around climate, because the challenge with climate is so much of it is about the narrative, right? Like, what is the story that we tell ourselves about our futures? And the story that we're living every day defines what that future will actually be. So that's where we need to sort of look at the role of narrative and changing that to change the outcome, hopefully for the better. And then climate itself, I think it's mixed blessings, but living in Australia, as I've chosen to do really the majority of my adult life, having grown up in the UK, this is a country of extremes. This is an environment that has the full breadth of range, except for sort of Arctic. And you can see, even over the 15 years that I've lived here, you can observe the changes as they're happening, and you can witness the brutal realities of the extremes. Right? You can see the floods, you can feel the fires, you can taste the smoke, and that's actually not the reality for the majority of people at the moment, fortunately. So I think to an extent we have this kind of wicked advantage that, like, you can actually at times look out the window and know what's happening. Other parts of the world, you have to watch it or hear about it. Of course, that gives us an opportunity, or one could say an obligation, to actually then see what's happening and choose to try and do something about it. That's not a particularly concise answer, but I think that's where I'll leave my response to your prompts for now. I'm back over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim, for sharing your story. And, it sparked off some things for me. And, I'm aware of your lived experience, your story, which is very powerful and incredibly moving. And I know that there's more than one story. And I was starting off the reflection of where did my call for climate come from? Because I don't have children that I need to worry about to make a better world. But I know that this passion for climate and looking after the world started quite young, but I think it's just been a gradual drip, drip, drip of various different things until those bushfires occurred. And I wasn't impacted by those bushfires. They didn't come up near me. They were hundreds of miles away, yet I could see the smoke and smell the smoke and taste the smoke, as you said, even though these bushfires were hundreds of miles away. And so it really did instigate this journey into what can I do as a coach to support climate change? What can I do to support leaders to, again, look at how we can look after our planet, look after our land? And as a consequence, actually, of the meetings that we've had, Tim, you're very generous in terms of sharing resources and ideas. And one of those many ideas I took up, which was joining a program that's been running the last 2 weeks, and today was another one of the sessions. And really joining that program has really made it very consciously clear to me that this work is about starts with our own inner journey. First and foremost, it really is about our own self-development, our own evolvement. I don't know if that's a word, but it's about our own journey to find out, what's important to us, to ourselves, first and foremost, and to let go of judgment and blame and but actually look at, how can we connect? Really, for me, it's about connection to self, connection to others, connection to the living. So again, I really appreciate your connection, Tim. And as I share that, I'm wondering what might be coming up for you, what might be sparking off for you, if any.
First of all, I have a very embodied sense of reciprocal gratitude, right? So I will share that. It's like really like a heartfelt sensation, like right in the middle of my chest. And so I think there's a number of things. Like all systemic change work starts inside, and if I look at the last probably decade, I think everything that I'm doing now that I would say has any meaning, significance, or impact is as a direct consequence of some origin that is me making a decision to change something about who I am, the way I show up in the world, and the story that I tell myself. So fundamentally, it's a shift in being, and that takes time, needs support. So I would say recognize the need to come into a level of awareness about who you are, how you operate, what you're bringing into the world, what your state of being is. Find lots of different ways to reestablish and then deepen connection. And there's lots of spaces to do that. I've had incredibly powerful experience in active hope circles, for an example, which is a specific practice that's been developed by a marvelous woman called Joanna Macy around engaging with the very powerful sort of disruptive emotion around just even thinking about what the future of a climate change world might look like. So those spaces are incredibly supportive. Find networks of professionals who are trying to figure out how to orientate their work life towards this kind of work, of which the CCA has been the primary one for me, but there are others. And I think do pay attention to place. And unless you live in a part of the world where climate change isn't real and everyone you speak to not only doesn't want to talk about it, but doesn't believe that it should be spoken about because it's not real, unless you live in one of those places, and I do acknowledge that those places are numerous, but you will find someone very near to you right now who is having the exact same internal wrestling match and is asking themselves the same question. That might be a faith community. It might be a local writers circle. It certainly will be the local political office of whichever political party you have that orientates towards tackling this particular challenge. But the conversations that I've had where I have connected most directly to community in this place have been at the school gate, especially after the bushfires. We had direct impact for months in this region, and going to the school gate and talking to people about just simply how they were going, the marvelous Australian colloquialism, got a very different response after that event, and has activated all kinds of different pathways for people. So those would be my suggestions for right now.
Yeah, wonderful, Tim. And as you said, I liked what you shared in terms of, I can't remember the words that you shared exactly, but really be mindful of the place that you're in. And I believe as coaches, we can connect. If we can connect with the place that we're in and maybe even ask questions of what is around us. So those wise coaching questions that supports us to create more awareness and identify what's really important is a wonderful practice. My hair's still a little bit wet. I went swimming today, and it was such wonderful conditions. I took my snorkeling gear out, and so I swam through the seaweed, and the conditions were so bright and calm, and there were very big fish to be seen, and it was just amazing just to be in that environment. And again, it took me back to, what's important here for me, to be able to do this, to be able to experience this magic. What's here for me to do? I've got my answers to that. But of course, we can walk in forests, we can walk in parks, to just, again, reconnect with nature and ask nature, what is there here for me to do? What's my responsibility? In fact, I was listening to an audio book today, which had a little bit of religion in it, which I'm not a religious person as such. I would call myself spiritual, but it quoted from the Bible that when God made earth, when God put man and woman on earth, we were assigned responsibility to look after everything living, look after that planet. So it was interesting how I got that message after my swim today. So, and you mentioned, Tim, CCA. You mentioned, yes, we've got to wrap up shortly. You mentioned CCA, which is the Climate Coaching Alliance. And so if you're interested in finding out about the Climate Coaching Alliance, do look up that, just Google that name. I think it's .org. Any other resources that you can recommend, Tim, before we wrap up for people to look at?
You know what, if I may, for the purposes of the podcast, so anyone who's driving, please wait until you're in a safe parking place. What I'd actually request is, if it's all right with you, I'll send you a list that you can include in the show notes, because there is an abundance of information, which is great. There is an amount of information that, having spent a long time in it and shifting it and sorting it, I would say is what you should be paying attention to, as opposed to some of the other information that's out there. But there's also a number of, particularly books now, and then podcasts, and then sort of specific coach orientated resources that I would say, here's an array, take your pick, try a few of these on, see what works for you. I've already mentioned Active Hope Circles. I really like the facilitation tools that are provided for free by the All We Can Save organization, which has emerged out of a co-authored book endeavor. I think Outrage and Optimism is an amazing podcast platform. And yeah, there's a list. So there's a few for right now. If you want more, scroll down.
Tim, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you being here and sharing your story. And again, I'm trusting, inspiring people who perhaps feel like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to combine the coaching, the leadership together with climate change. Well, Tim, you're a fantastic role model of bringing that all together. So thank you for sharing your story. And we look forward to hearing your feedback, listeners. We hope you enjoyed this podcast and look forward to you joining us next time.
Thanks for listening. You can find out more about us on our website, www.empower-world.com, and on our social media networks, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Be empowered.